Does Google kind of like freak you out?
Oh, dude, 100%. And I'll tell you right now, like our business revenue's down because Google's down. Can't envision a world where I would want to watch an imaginary person tell me about personal finance or something. Like I got more publicity myself than my publisher did.
Speaking of the Fed, I was going to ask you about that. Are we hitting this soft landing? Welcome to the Money Shop. Okay, you just brought up karaoke. Go ahead and tell me what you were going to tell me about karaoke.
Well, so every year on my birthday, we go to this really dive bar for karaoke. And pretty much anytime I go to a conference, we do karaoke. And so I was saying, I'm going to sing, I love the Sublime poster there. I'm going to do What I Got by Sublime. It was a very, a song that resonated with me when I was a kid, younger.
Yeah. So karaoke, Sublime. So I used to hate karaoke. Like,
really,
I was like terrified of it. And I don't know why. I think it was just more of like, I'm naturally pretty like introverted. And so the idea of like getting up in front of a bunch of people and singing is like terrifying to me. But then we did it that time in Vegas. The last time we went, and it was like, I'd never been to like a place like that where it was like, I didn't realize there were places where you can like all sit in a room together and like do bottle service and stuff. And like, cool. I always imagined it was just like you in front of like 100 people in a bar.
Right.
And it's not like that. Or is it like that sometimes? It was my experience.
It's like that a lot of times. Yeah. But the private karaoke room is the way to go.
Oh, dude, it was so much fun. So now it is like a tradition, like for our company to do karaoke together. So like now I look forward to it. Like I am pushing to go to the karaoke place because I'm like, we got to do this. And my number one song is Santeria, Sublime.
No way.
Like it fits. I don't know, something about it fits like my voice really well. And that and Brandy, you know that song? The
I'm
like
sure old
school. I'll send it to you. So yeah, now every time we do a company retreat, like we're doing karaoke, but we don't even do it like fancy. We just go, we literally just like, we rent a house and then we just do it. We like download a TV program or whatever and do it
right.
Like, you know, with like a hairbrush or whatever. It's totally ridiculous, but it's so much fun.
Oh, dude. Well, my practicing, I literally practice in my office with a TV and YouTube up with the karaoke lyrics going. So like, I'm with you, man.
Yeah. Is karaoke something we're going to talk about money at some point. Is karaoke something that you like, how did you get into karaoke? Because you are into it more than most people that I've ever met.
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, so I grew up kind of on, I would say like the lower income side of things. Mm-hmm. So there were like a few ways to, in my mind at the time, to break the poverty cycle. One of them is acting, which I tried.
Okay.
Another one is sports.
You tried acting? Okay.
I did. Yeah. So I was in an MTV commercial in, what was it, like 2000 for Music Life Television. And then I tried sports. I was not good at sports. I mean, I'm okay, but I'm definitely not professional level. Right.
Yeah.
And then music. I love music. And so, which is funny because you're the guy with all the music on the background and I've got like this random stuff back here. But it was like, okay, I wanted to be like a rock star. That was my thing, right? So I tried that for a while. Didn't work out. Wow. It's interesting. Like it's almost like a marriage when you have like band members, right? Like you really have to jive. Otherwise, there's no synergy. It just doesn't take off. You know.
So you were in a band?
I was, yeah.
You have like the least direct path to personal finance influencer like that I've heard so far. Because I was going to ask you, because I actually don't. It's funny. I've known you for a while now. I don't actually know how you got into what you're currently doing. Like I did like research before we came on the podcast and stuff, but okay. So you were trying to get rich being a band member.
Yeah. Well, it's like, do something that you're passionate about, make money at it. Right.
Yeah.
Never made a dime with it. But I did enjoy it. And so, I went to college and decided to, figure out I'm going to major in business and philosophy. And when I graduated college, I got into sales and I was 100% commission. Ooh. And so you got to, I see your eyes going there. You're like,
well, I know that kind of sucks, but I think about that and I was like, I've hired 100% commission salespeople. It's just a tough way to make a living. I feel like, unless you're really good at it.
Well, dude, and it was during the recession. So like the economy dried up. I'm 100%. I'm like, it's like, there's nothing to go out and hunt for right now, So it was tough times, but I learned a lot from it. But that's when my wife and I got married. And when we got married, we realized, oh man, we got a ton of debt. Like she's got student loans. I've got student loans. I've got a car loan. we've got credit card debt. Like, we got to figure this out. So that's kind of how everything started off.
So you went from, oh, okay, that's right. And you paid off a bunch of debt, right? Like you paid off a bunch of, was it just credit? Like it was credit card, consumer, no student loans.
Yeah, it was student loans too. It was consumer debt, $52,000 outside of mortgage debt that we paid off in 18 months.
Dang. What did you, that's actually like very similar to my story. Like I did $40,000 in 18 months as a
No way.
teacher. Yeah. Yeah. It was in the 18, it's funny. Cause like, I feel like this stuff used to matter more. Do you feel like I feel like if my story, I started blogging in 2015, and I feel like my story, if I came out with it now, like I don't think anybody would give a shit if like
Hmm.
I was like I paid off 40 grand in 18 months. Like I don't think that story has any legs now, but like back then it was like I got on CNBC and like Business Insider, all those stories like or features like you've gotten before. Like, do you think that those stories are impressive anymore?
I think they are to a certain audience, right? I think you're right. I think there's the people that graduate to like the fire, right? You're like, oh, I'm not
Right.
worried about the debt anymore. I want to know about the guy that retired by 35 and then the guy that retired by 32. And, it's like that
Yeah.
moving needle or whatever.
Yeah, now I
But
feel like it's like you've got to be super rich, super young. Like I feel like, and I don't know if it's just easier to do that now, but I've put a lot of thought into that because I remember like Grant Sabadia, he's going to come on the podcast in I don't know a couple months or what? No, in a month. Um, and like his was like became a millionaire at 30, and his story is great. Like he I don't know if he like the way he tells the story is so good because like he started with like $2 and then like got to $1 million in X amount of time. But even that story now, I feel like maybe it was just the pandemic or something. It was like 20-year-olds are becoming rich so much faster. It's like you see 20-year-olds that are worth like $100 million or whatever. I just made that one up.
right.
But it just seems like that's accelerated a lot. It-
Yeah, I think it's much more of a creator economy, right? So I think with like TikTok and YouTube and blogging and all the different avenues that people can make money, I just think it's a time where people can expedite their wealth fast. Where even 10 years
yeah.
ago, I started in 2010, so that 13 years ago, like TikTok didn't exist, right? Like
Yeah.
YouTube was barely getting off the ground, like
It's
so
true.
it's like now it's just like this is what the world we live in.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Who was I thinking about the other day? I think another good example of that is Tori Dunlap.
Yeah.
Because that was during the pandemic. I feel like she blew up during the pandemic, and like I think her story was like became a millionaire or multimillionaire at like 28. I've just seen so many of those stories, and I think that I think you're totally right. Like that is exactly what it is. It's just the the
But I think
pandemic like accelerated that with the creator economy.
her first thing though was her first 100K. So if you
Right.
think about it, that's a smaller step that I think a lot of people can relate to. You're like, oh yeah, I mean, $1 million seems so far off, but a hundred
Right.
thousand, like I could see a path to that. So I think she started there and then it kind of progressed.
Yeah. Did you ever do income reports?
Yeah,
Like did would you still do those?
I've thought about it. My income's definitely different than it used to be, and so
I mean,
I
more from a privacy standpoint, like sharing the numbers kind of thing. Because I used to do it, and now it
yeah.
freaks me out to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't freak me out. I think I learned from Pat Flynn where it was like the value of income reports for me were inspiration. Like I remember looking at smart passive income when I was working a W-2 job and I was like, dude, this guy's making 10 grand a month from selling PDFs of his architecture course or whatever. I'm like, I
Right.
could I could do that. Not architecture, but I could figure something out. But then once you start getting to like 50, 100 grand a month, it's like, I think that starts to be a little bit more, well, that doesn't seem realistic for me. That guy has some special sauce. I don't, I can't duplicate that. So it's a
Right.
little bit more of a distance from the audience. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, I think the idea is like, can you make 6 figures to 7 figures on an online business and replace your full-time job? Heck yes, you can. Right.
Right.
And there's plenty of people, you and I are examples of being able to do that. And so it's less about like the monthly numbers and more about like, what's the path to freedom?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. I just for some reason I don't know if it's when I had a kid, and I'm saying this stuff like you can still go find that information. It's not like it's like super private or anything anymore. I just remember like I was doing the income reports, and then I think 2018 when I started Laptop Empires, like the numbers changed drastically because like before I was doing pretty good. I was doing like $10,000 a month, and um, but then it went up, and then I all of a sudden got like extremely uncomfortable with it, and I was like just like looking for any excuse I could to like stop doing them, because I was like, I don't feel comfortable sharing this information anymore. And I don't know if that's like if I should feel uncomfortable about it or not. But then I also felt like friends like treat like it's kind of weird, like it's a little awkward. And so then I stopped doing them. Did you stop? What time did you? When did you stop doing them?
I want to say it's probably been like 4 years or something like that
Yeah, it's probably about the
since
same
I've
for me.
and I think and I want to say like the last one that I had was like 16 grand or something. And,
Yeah,
and and then I was like after that and it started going up and you're like I felt like there's a diminishing return of value. And I also, this is kind of interesting. I had a guy reach out onto me on Instagram asking me for money. And that's when I
whoa,
was like, to your point, when you put it publicly out there, there is a perception now, right? Even if you have a friend that's a lawyer or a doctor, you don't know exactly how much money they make, right? And so you're
yeah,
not like, hey, can I go have some money? But if someone's like publicly like, hey, I make X, and they're like, well, they don't need X. They only need this much to live on. Well, maybe I could ask them for some money, right? So yeah, there is some weird stuff that came along with that for sure.
yeah, definitely. Um, what I mean, you've kind of transitioned more to like video now, right? Like obviously, like you still have Well Kept Wallet, and I'll do like an intro before we, this goes live and everything, so people know who you are. But like, um, I mean, I've seen you just so much more active on video, and I'm going that same way too. Like, was that like an intentional decision you made to like just start putting yourself out there more?
Yeah, for sure. So I've always enjoyed video. The problem is I've never, um, you know, the blog for me was really the way that I made money. So it was like I just put the resources and the time behind what was providing revenue and growing the business. Now I just see the writing on the wall with AI. I see the, content seems to be becoming a commodity now. Like, dude, I've
Right.
watched some videos where I'm like, these guys are literally taking our content, copying and pasting it into Chat GPT and saying, rewrite this article. And then they're just putting, and they're saying, proofread it and do all this stuff. And they're going to outrank us or, like potentially. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was like, okay, they can't replace Bobby. They can't replace me as a
Right.
personality, right? And people don't want to watch AI talking heads, at least not yet.
Maybe
Um,
not yet.
so, so I think there's a future there, right? Where it's like people listen to the Joe Rogan podcast because it's Joe Rogan, they know what to expect, etc.
Yeah.
And so I'm by no means a Joe Rogan, but I'm just saying there's personalities. I think is what drives people to listen and watch certain content. And so that's something that I think is going to do really well in the future, and that's why we're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And man, yeah, the AI stuff. Like, I feel like everybody has a different opinion on it. I had Robert Farrington on, and he was like, he's not concerned about it at all. Or I don't know if he is now, but at the time we did the podcast, he was like, no, it's not a big deal. Like, just a language learning model. Then I had Steve Chu on, and Steve was like very concerned about it. And I feel like everybody's got kind of a different take. But I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable. It's not even AI. I just Google in general freaks me out. Like having Google as a main traffic source, like especially like I feel like recently there's been a lot of algorithm updates, and I think it's just like you just never really know if you're going to be if like a core algorithm update comes out and you're going to be like in great shape, or if it's going to like screw you. So that freaks me out a lot. So like diversifying the video stuff has been pretty big, and like diversifying the paid advertising has been big for us too. Like, do you feel the same way about it? Like, does Google kind of like freak you out?
Oh, dude, 100%. Like
Yeah.
we've gone from 1.2 million visitors a month to 1 million a month to 800,000 to
Right.
600,000. I mean, it's just like it keeps I think we're at 200,000 now. I'm like I could have never fathomed a world where this was the case.
Yeah.
Because it just seemed like I don't know. It felt like it was a more level playing field, maybe not as saturated. So it was
Right.
like, hey, there's plenty for everybody to be able to write quality content, rank, move around, top 10 positions, but everybody's doing well. But eventually it's like you got the bank rates, the nerd wallets, the Forbes, the business insiders. And then now you've got the video box, the people also ask box. You've got
Yeah.
Google answering everything in the first, section with all the different responses, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like, the search is so different now. So yeah, I'm with you, man. That
Yeah.
freaks me out for sure.
It scares me. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to talk to Grant about it when he comes on, because he owns MMG Media, and like they are scaling organic search sites. Like that's like their thing. So maybe he has he probably, I mean, Grant, he's super smart. He probably has some, you know, awesome explanation for how how it's all going to work out. Yeah, but it does freak me out a little bit. But I do think like the YouTube stuff too. It's like, what if Larry Ludwig talks about this all the time, where it's like the talking head videos, like you're going to be able to fake those pretty soon. Like, does that concern you at all?
Potentially. I mean, I don't know, man. Like when I watch creators, I'm trying to think of a good one. I mean, Mr. Beast is not a good example because he's kind of, I would say he's an anomaly, right?
Right.
But I would just say people that put together really quality content are going to succeed, right? So, I mean, if someone does it with AI, great. But I think for me, it's like, I think where AI is helpful is in the editing phase, right? There's software where it will literally cut out all the ums and ahs for you without all
Yeah.
you have to do is click a button, you know? And it's like, that's amazing when you can have AI help you with the process. So I think I'm embracing it from that standpoint. Um, I don't know. I can't envision a world where I would want to watch an imaginary person tell me about personal finance or something. I don't know.
I don't know either, man. I don't know. Yeah, I've thought about that too. I feel like we have more time with that. Like, I feel like if Google's going to completely go away, sorry, I got some in my eye. I feel like if Google's going to like go away or become ineffective or like impossible to rank for, like that's probably happening quickly. Or
Mhm.
it just seems, because I do agree, man. Like, you see Forbes, and I don't know, people that are watching this probably don't know like a ton about, about how this stuff works, but Forbes has like a trash user experience. Like, you
Mhm.
get on there and it's like more ads than I've ever seen. And like, I write for Forbes, like but it's like, man, you get on there and it's hard to look at the articles, but they rank number one for like everything right now, and
Right.
it's in the bigger sites, the bank rates and all of that. And you just have this kind of like concentration of like all of the high volume keywords with all the search, like, are going to these, it's just the rich are getting richer. It's harder to find pockets to compete in. But I guess that's probably not going to happen with video, I would think, unless like it would be crazy if like Forbes comes out with like a fake person like that like ranks for everything.
Well, I could totally, you know how people do like experiments on YouTube. So I could
Hmm.
totally see someone saying, "Hey, I'm going to create an AI persona and I'm going to make 10 videos with that persona. And my goal is to get 10,000 subscribers in the first 90 days or whatever." And they're
Yeah.
going to do it. Like it's going to happen. And it's going to be like then everybody's going to create a video on how to make money using AI heads without
Uh,
having your own face on YouTube or whatever, you know?
I hate that. Oh
You know?
God. It's just changing so fast. It is wild. Like, you came into it in 2010, which was probably nice because there probably wasn't a lot. Like, was 2020, that was pretty early in blogging, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, there probably wasn't a ton of competition.
Nerd Wallet was 2009. Penny
Oh
Hoarder was
wow.
2011. So everything was like just getting off the ground in that time frame, right? There was not a lot of competition. I mean, you had guys like Jim Wang, but
Mhm.
he was out of the game, I think, by that time. And then JD, get rich slowly, but his stuff, he wasn't writing it to rank. He was writing it because he enjoyed it and thought it would be helpful. And so it was just a very different landscape back then.
Yeah. Even when I came back, like when I came in 2015, who was it? It was Financial Samurai.
Yeah.
Remember, he was kind of getting a little bigger. I came in because Jay Money from Budgets Are Sexy, who I had on the podcast, and he's the best podcast interview ever. Um, but I saw him, and then I saw like Aaron Lowry from Broke Millennial, and then like you fast forward to now, and it's like it's so much different. Like now, it's like mostly like TikTok influencers or Instagram influencers. I guess YouTube people too. Like, where do you think it's all going? This is what I wanted to ask you, because like you've been in the personal finance game so long. Like, where do you think it's all going at some point? Is it all going to go to influencers? Is it something else happening? Like, is ChatGPT going to like take out the personal finance influencer world? Like, what do you think?
No, I think it's going to go to personalities. I mean, if you think about it over like time, right? Let's just say back in, I'm going to try to. I'm not really that old, but say like the '80s, right? Like you
Yeah.
probably have influences. Actually, let's not do '80s because I'm not really. I couldn't tell you who the influencers were back then. But let's say '90s, 2000s. Like you have Clark Howard, Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey, like even fast forward a little bit, you got Jim Cramer. Like you have these people that are like very recognizable. When I even say their names, I can kind of picture like, Dave Ramsey is the debt guy, Jim Cramer is the investing guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think people are going to follow the Bobby Hoyts or the Deacon Hayeses that they resonate with that have
Right.
that content, you know? And so, dude, there's this guy, Sam, is it Sam Sulek? He's like
Oh, the fitness guy.
yes, the
Oh, dude, I've
bodybuilder
been
guy.
seeing him in my feed so much, and I'm
Yeah.
like, it's driving me nuts. But I also watch it, so it's like totally my fault because
Yeah.
it's great content.
Well, what's interesting about it is it's like reality TV, but it's not fake. You know what I mean? Like it's like
Yeah,
it's an authentic reality TV. It's like this is this guy's day and him talking, and he has like 2 billion followers on YouTube at 20 years old or whatever. You know,
I know.
and so I really do think that I think people are going to gravitate towards influencers that they know, like, and trust. And that's going to be more of a video experience, right? That's how, like right now, we're
Right.
connecting better because of video versus if I'm emailing back and forth with you. Now you're really good about it because you use GIFs, and I don't know if you call them GIFs or GIFs, but
Dude,
um,
we have an internal company debate about that because
okay.
our Tom, our web developer, says GIFs. Like he is like that is the way to do it, and I think it's GIFs. But anyway,
Yeah, because
that's
like if
that's
you think of
something
like
hot debate.
Jiffy Lube is Jiffy Lube, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Gift, GIF, like
I know.
I don't
No,
know.
I'm on the same page. To me, it should be GIF, but I don't know. All the developer people say that it's GIF, and I think that that's stupid.
So,
Um,
but my point with that is that in email or in Facebook, your communication style is more visual than
mhm.
words, right? And I think
Yeah,
just, I think moving forward, that's where things are going.
yeah, that's a good point. That's probably true. Um, I'm just yeah, I'm in. I don't. When did you write your book? I wanted to give your book a shout out.
2017.
2017. Okay. Yeah, I saw you tweet about it the other day. Like, was that process like? Is that something you want to do more of? Like, write more books and like, if you're talking about like kind of building a personal brand, like, what do
Yeah.
you? How do you
So
think about that?
what's crazy is I have another book written that
Whoa.
I've never published, and it's called Money Mind Shift. So coming from like a poor upbringing, I I didn't have a mentality of like becoming a millionaire. Like that seemed impossible, right? And so there had to be a shift in my mindset of like, well, wait a second, that is possible. And if it is possible, what are the steps to get there? So yes, I don't know why I haven't published it yet, to be honest with you.
Was the first one worth it? Sorry to interrupt, but was the first one worth it? Like, did you feel like, okay, I did this and like this was a great
so
investment or?
well, no. So mine was a really weird deal. Jeff Rose had already written a book, and he was approached by a publisher to write another book, and he's like, I don't want to do it. So he's like, Deacon, would you want to write this book about, retiring early? And I'm like, heck yeah, I would love to. The problem with that is it was less personality driven. When
Mm,
you work with a publisher that's like, hey, we're going to give you a publishing deal. Here's our expectations. It wasn't like sprinkle in your personality and your view. Like it was very much like, hey, no, we want an authoritative guide on retiring early, and that's pretty much it. Now I was able to push back and get a little bit, so I think that's why it wasn't exciting for me. I felt kind of like a cog in a wheel, you know
yeah, that's kind of weird.
versus being like, hey, I feel like some people like Grant or even like Aaron Lowry, right? Like if you have like a message that you want to give to the world and a story that you want to share, like I could see people being passionate about it and be like, I want to go do book signings and I want to meet people and I want to tell more
Mhm.
people. Don't get me wrong. I think my book is great and I think it helps people, but I
Yeah.
think it kind of soured my view of like, oh, that as being a way to further reach people and make money and that kind of thing. So
Did you do any like promotion of it? Like, I don't know. Like, I know shockingly little about how these book deals work, but like, I know like when Grant went through that process or Aaron or whatever, it's like you write the book and then all of a sudden the publisher is really like pushing you out to all the different like the CNBCs and so you see like the people that wrote the book like right before the book launch like get a lot of publicity. Like,
yeah.
was that kind of a similar situation with you?
So unfortunately, I got more publicity myself than my publisher did.
Oh,
So that was, but because being part of the FinCon community, I could just email someone and be like, "Hey, Joe, can I be on Stacking Benjamin?" Sure. Can you talk about this?
yeah.
I could email tons of people and just say, "Hey, I want to promote this." I was supposed to be on like Oprah.com, and then they canceled on me on the last minute or whatever. And I was like,
Dang.
so there was so many things where I had higher expectations for the book launch. Also, the other thing is the company that actually was my publisher was called Adams Media Group. So they're like a small independent publisher. Now they got acquired by Simon and Schuster, which is awesome because now I'm an author under Simon and Schuster.
That's cool.
However, they didn't have the like the budget and the publishing like resources. So that's the other thing. So if like you ever do want to write a book, like obviously the better the publisher, the more relationships, the more reach it's going to get.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of the challenge there.
Yeah. It's something, it's interesting. Dude, I didn't even know what I would want to write a book about until more recently. And I'm curious if the same thing happened with you. I very much, when I started my blog, I was like, I don't know, man, I was kind of a jerk. Like I was like really judgy and like, you need to do this with your money and you need to save like this. And then as I started to like learn more about personal finance and learn like that, my experience was just like one small experience and like the many possibilities that somebody can kind of go through when they like how they grow up or whatever. Then I became like less confident about like being a personal finance guru because I was just like,
Sure.
I know so little. Like I know how to pay off debt. And this was several years ago. It's like I know how to pay off debt by being like super cheap and like living this like really like kind of terrible lifestyle of like not ever buying anything for myself or any of that. And then as I started to make more money, then I was like, oh wait, there's like a better way to do this. And like my whole mindset's changed. But it's taken me the better part of like 7 or 8 years to be like, okay, this is what I want to help people with, which really for me is just helping people make more money and start like their own freelancing business and just like leave jobs they hate and stuff. Was it the same for you or did you come out like just knowing exactly like the message that you wanted to get out to people?
Well, I think originally I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people get out of debt. And so my upbringing was my parents got divorced, and they both had their houses foreclosed on and they both filed bankruptcy separately. So,
Oh,
like, my parents were horrible with money, right? So I'm like, I'm never going to let that happen to my family, right? I'm going to make sure that debt is not going to run our life like that. And so for me, it was just a passion of like, hey, consumer debt is just one, it's like your foot's in the door, right? But the challenge is like, well, then my mom got a home equity line on her house and then the market crashed. And so now her house that was worth $400,000 is now worth 200,000. And now she's not making as much money as she used to make. And so it was like, okay, so it was kind of like, okay, if I could help people understand all of these like pitfalls and things to look out for, I could help them avoid them, or if they're in them, I could help them create a path out. So that was kind of the message, and I think I'm still there. But I use credit cards. Like I'm not a full Dave Ramsey nerd. Like I use credit
yeah.
cards. I use points to go places. Like but debt to me is like a huge just debilitator for most people, and that's something I really want to help them get out of. So
Yeah. You paid off your house a couple years ago, right?
yeah, I think COVID, because I remember I didn't want to share it. I was like, it feels like you're like, yeah, everybody's doing really bad right now. I don't know if I want to like boast about this, but then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna share. This is what we did, and hopefully it inspires people that like this is possible. But yeah, it was I think about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I'm guessing you had a really low interest rate.
Oh
I
yeah,
feel like the general narrative, especially when we were in this just like super low interest rate environment, was like, don't pay off your house. And honestly, I have a really low interest rate on my house. So I was like, I'm not paying this off. Um, but now we're probably going to end up moving and probably going to be, I don't know what kind of loan we would actually be getting for the house, but it would be way higher. So now I'm kind of like, well, maybe I'll just try to pay it off as soon as I could, like, but you did that at a time where people were generally saying like that's not good advice. So like what was it about the house? Like was it just because you're an entrepreneur? Like what was it that made you go like I need to pay this house off?
yeah. Well, there's two things. One is my upbringing, right? So knowing that my mom, like the house I grew up in, got foreclosed on, and my mom no longer owns it, right? Like that was a huge motivating factor of like it's not a numbers thing, right? Necessarily, it's more of a I don't want to have that ever happen to my family.
Right.
Um, but the second part of it is if you think about how much money do you need to have invested so that you can take 4% from it and be able to make that payment, right? So let's just say on every 100,000, you're going to make $4,000, right? Well, dude, my mortgage payment now with house prices or whatever with the interest rate would be like 4 or 5 grand a
Right.
month,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do the math. So you're like, okay, So I would need to have, $1 million to $2 million invested just so I can make my mortgage payment.
Yeah.
And so it's like that's another part of the equation I think a lot of people don't think about is like, no, how much money would I need to have invested so that I can make my actual mortgage payment? Well, why don't I just pay it off and then I don't need to have that extra money in the bank
Yeah.
account?
Did you have anybody talking crap, like saying like, "Oh, you're so dumb for paying your house off"?
Not that I can remember. I'm sure there's been some like weird, like I've probably had some comments like, why would you pay off? I think it was like 3%, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I would just explain, like, number one, like we don't need to invest more money. We're doing okay there. Number two, it's like that peace of mind of just not having to have to make that mortgage payment. And I'll tell you right now, like our business revenue's down because Google's down, and it's a nice place to be like, I have no mortgage payment, so it doesn't really affect us that much because our biggest cost is like groceries. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pretty sweet place to
No,
be.
that is pretty sweet. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot too. Like I don't, we've got paid off car. The only debt that we have is the home loan. It's low interest rate. But like as I've been like hiring more people, yeah, like hiring more people, growing the business and all that stuff. Like I've really been like, man, I probably should just pay this out. Like I don't know. I'm trying to make sure that like it's like as I've made more money, I'm trying to make sure that my costs are lower, like my living expenses are lower, because I'm just like, I think it's just you start to get a little bit more of like, man, if there was something bad that happened, like I would rather be in a really awesome position where I don't, it doesn't matter how much money is coming in.
Right.
So I think that is, and it's funny because I had a friend years ago when I first started my business. He was like, he had paid off a bunch of commercial real estate that he had, or maybe not a bunch. He had paid off commercial real estate. He had paid off his house. And his advice to me was like, you need to pay off all that stuff as soon as you could. And I remember being like, no, dude, the interest rates are so low. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And now that I'm a little bit older, I'm like, yeah, I can see exactly why you did that. But yeah, so, and how, for you with the business, you said business revenue is down, you're diversifying. Like, what's your longer term goal with the business? Like, you've been doing Well Kept Wallet for a long time. Like, where are you trying to take it now?
Yeah, I would say more of a brand, right? And I think that seems kind of cliche, but that's like, I think the reality is before, with a content site, you have a brand. We have a brand, right? Like you have
Right.
Millennial Money Man, Well Kept Wallet. But I mean, if someone was to see me on the street, they don't know what that is, right? For the most part. If I go to
Right.
FinCon, I'm like a mini celebrity. But but if I'm like, if I'm in my neighborhood, people don't even know what a blog is. And
Yeah.
so I think there's a little bit more of like, well, how do you create a brand that's recognizable and people associate something with it, right? And hopefully good stuff. Like Deacon helps people get out of debt and achieve financial freedom. How does he do that? Through his podcast and videos on YouTube that spread out to the other channels. And so it's like that's kind of the direction. It's less about, hey, what can I write that's going to rank in Google? And it's like, no, who could I have on the show that's going to impact my audience? Who can I learn from that I know my audience is going to learn from? What can I share that's really going to benefit people to have a better life? And so I think that's more the direction I'm going.
Do you ever get worried? Because I get worried about this. Do you ever get worried about like you being like such a big part of the brand? Like, because like if you're building something like a Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman or whatever, like, do you ever get concerned about just like you having to be front facing, or do you like that?
Uh, I don't. So it's interesting because I would call myself like a hybrid between introvert and extrovert.
Yeah.
Dude, if I go to FinCon, it's just so much input and so much people time that I need like a 2 or 3 hour like break in the middle of the day where I go back
Yeah.
to the hotel room and I'm like, let me just disconnect. But I
Yeah.
love being around people, right? So I'll just say I enjoy the video aspect of it. I mean, there's definitely a grind to it. I mean, you're like adjusting the camera and the lights, and then a light dies in the background, and you're like, it's not like
Yeah.
just easy peasy. But I think the reality is like I do enjoy that part of it. However, are you familiar with niche pursuits?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Spencer is done a great job of hiring a host for the Niche Pursuits podcast. And so it's a window into the potential future to answer your question of, hey, Spencer, for a long period of time, this was his podcast. It was all about, him, his studies. And then eventually he's like, no, I could just hire someone that could do it. And in fact, it's growing. when he has somebody else hosting his
Yeah.
own podcast. And so I think there's a future where that could be the case, right? I think
Yeah.
I'm just the conduit right now because I'm I have experience and knowledge and I'm motivated to do it. But at some point I feel like I probably could hire someone under the Well Kept Wallet umbrella. Where it's more difficult is if your brand is susieorman.com or clark.com, like it's hard to be like, oh, well, here's Joe. You're like, well, who's Joe? I'm here for Clark, or
Right.
Susie or whatever.
Yeah. No, I saw a video of Dave Ramsey talking about that the other day. Cause like his company's Ramsey Solutions, it's the Dave Ramsey show. And like they've been systematically over a period of, I guess, years now, introducing new hosts, like trying to get, they track their like Dave revenue. I think he said it was like for a period of time, it was like the majority was him, or then it turned into like 78% him. But now it's like they've brought on all these other hosts, and he is a minority, like part of what drives revenue for that company, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably the best way to go. But you got to find good people. Um, are you? Do you have employees, or have you ever hired employees, or do you go the all contract route? Like, how do you do
Yeah.
that?
I used to have employees. Now that's all now subcontractors.
Do you because I talk to different, I typically ask that question a lot because I just like, I've always been fascinated with like, there are a lot of people in this space that really don't want to have employees. And I was that person for like so long. I was like, I don't want employees. Like it's too much headache. And then I've hired employees. I'm like, oh, this is so much better. But like, do you enjoy the contractor thing, or did you enjoy having employees more? Like which way did you go?
I definitely enjoyed having contractors more. So
Interesting. See, that's what I'm saying.
yeah, so but what I found, and this is for me, so this is my personal experience, is like when I had employees, I felt like I was looking for work for them to do, right? And
Interesting.
so it's like I'm kind of trying to fill hours in a day with stuff to do, versus
Mm,
what I feel like independent contractors are very efficient. It's like no, you just do the work that's needed to get done, nothing more, nothing less, and then in fact, a lot of them have capacity for more. So it's like so if I do end up, if Google does a Google algorithm update and I can publish more content, then like, hey, okay, now I can pay you more, I can give you more work, and you can hire more writers, and so I personally like that. I also like the freedom that it allows. So like my main blog manager, she just was in Italy, and she's just doing all this stuff to where like she's not handcuffed to my business. It's
yeah.
like she can still live her life and do what she wants to do and not have to ask for permission. Like, I don't know. It just works out better for kind of the way that I run my business. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so funny because like I think Robert Farrington had a probably a very similar answer. I think I asked him that question, but I've just a lot of people have really done well with contractors, and I just really sucked at it. Like I just for some reason like I was not able to like get contract. I would always get like kind of annoyed that they wouldn't lean in more. But like,
yeah,
why would they? They're contractors. Like they're not. That's
right,
why they're contractors. They don't want to lean in
right.
more. So that's why I started hiring employees because I was just like, I want people that are like in it with me. That's I feel like, and I'm curious if you dealt with this too, because like when I was just doing Millennial Money Man by myself, um, I was like kind of depressed, to be honest
Hmm.
with you. Like it was kind of like I was like living that dream life. Like I was in coffee shops every day. I was just like writing and sipping my coffee, and I'd be like, which coffee shop do I want to go to today? And then like after I don't know, like 6 months of that, I hated it.
Hmm.
And like so what I found is like, but then it's like hiring contractors helped with that, and I was like happier because I needed like the human interaction, I guess. But then it still wasn't like enough. But I'm curious, like, did you have any experience like that? Like, was there ever a point where it was just you and your computer doing well kept wallet?
Oh yeah, yeah, for a long time. And I mean, even it feels like that today with the contractors, right? Like my Julie's in Houston, my writers in other states. Like we're not meeting on a regular basis. Like maybe Julie and I meet like twice a month on Zoom. That
Okay.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it does feel a little bit more like just me. But yeah, there was definitely a time where it was just me. And I'm much like I said, I'm much more extroverted, so that's totally difficult,
Yeah.
and I'm easily like sidetracked. So like it's when I had an employee, to your point, it was very good because like I had like someone was coming in between this hour and this hour. I had an office like, okay, what do I want Christina to do today? Like, oh, well, she does graphic design. Let's have her make a T-shirt for FinCon. You're like, I don't need it, but you're like,
Right.
hey, it's something she could do. And so But yeah, it was kind of more creative, more, there are benefits to it for sure.
Yeah. Would you ever do a business? Do you have any business stuff outside of the blogging? Like, do you have side stuff?
I used to, I don't anymore.
Would you do a business in a totally different industry? Is that now that you've been doing? Because like 2010, like I feel like 13 years in the online world is like dog years. Like I think that's a long time.
Yeah.
Because I'm coming up on 8, and I just feel like I've been doing this forever. Like, have you ever thought about like going into a completely different business vertical that's not online?
Yeah. So one thing that I've thought about, so my dad's a general contractor.
Okay.
Um, and I've just thought about, like, we did a remodel at my house. So a couple things I just want to be clear of. I am not a like handy person for the most part. I'm not a design like, type, but we took a jackhammer to a fireplace, and it was like one of the most exhilarating things, just destroying that thing. We took out 3 walls in the interior of my house and like taking sledgehammers to it. I'm like, I'm a great demo guy, right? Like,
Right.
so I could see myself being like, hey, I'm going to provide the capital. We're going to go buy this house that we're going to fix up and then potentially turn it into a rental. So I think maybe instead of buying a business, I could see myself doing something like that if I had the
Yeah.
right people to be able to do the work. Um, I have thought about, like, I want to do something physical, because like this
Mm.
is what I do all day. I sit in a chair. It's like I used to work in an electronics store, and we had like a warehouse, and you had to go back in the warehouse, and you have to get a dolly, and you'd have to load the TV or whatever onto it, and then you have to like take it out to someone's car. Like, I don't know, there's just something about doing something physically active that I miss in work, and I just don't know what that would look like today, though.
Bro, that's why I got the standing desk.
Yeah.
Which is not a real supplement for that. But like I will say that is something like, yeah, the physical part of it. It's funny, everybody on the team is getting walking like the desk treadmills now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we're all doing standing desks and desk treadmills. But I do think there is something to that. Cause like I think that's one I gained quite a bit of weight when I first started my online business, which it wasn't something I would have thought would happen. But you go from like I was a teacher, so I was like walking a ton every day to like
Right.
doing nothing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I've lost pretty much all of that. But it's like there is something to there is like as much as the online business thing is very desirable, I think there's also like there's kind of some downsides to it, you know?
Mhm.
And I think like even like you think about like social media, like mental health, because speaking of Tori, I'd like to get her on the podcast at some point, but like um, she blew up in a way that was like seemed very quick, but the amount of like venom that she got, or it seems like she got, and just other people like that are influencers that really put themselves out there and get like heat. Like you go into some of those Reddit threads and it is bad. Like they are talking some crap. Um, like, is that something that you've ever dealt with? Because now that you're putting yourself out there a little bit more, like, have you ever like seen that downside of the online business?
So, yes, but here's where I've been a little bit more like, I feel like in Tori's case, actually I can't speak for her. I'll just say for me. I don't like to cause controversy. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
I'm much more like the pragmatic side of things, of like, if someone's like, I want to use the debt avalanche to get out of debt, I'm like, okay. I mean, I like the debt snowball, but if that works for you, go for it, right?
yeah,
Where Dave Ramsey would be like, that's stupid, just do the debt snowball. Like,
yeah,
I think there's people that are okay with controversy and they stick to a certain path, and it does really well for them because it causes a lot of engagement.
yeah.
Um, so I've had some of that. Like, I had this one TikTok video get like 600,000 views, and it was funny because it was about the stimulus checks,
Hmm.
and I said the Biden administration. And as soon as I said that, right, like, my thing is not political whatsoever. But
Right.
like, I had people being like, call him president, please. Like, and then I'd have people like saying, like, he's not my president. I'm like, I
Oh
don't even
my
know what's
god.
happening right here. I'm just telling you, this is what they passed and this is what you can expect. But like, it's amazing how much controversy causes stuff to go viral and get engagement. And,
Yeah.
and so I've steered away from that just because I'm not trying to like go that route. But it's
Mm.
I
Yeah.
have gotten, and I never take it personally because I'm never really like saying this is the way you have to do it. And if you don't believe that, you're stupid. I've just never done that. I'm a little bit more accepting that personal finance is personal and people are going to approach things differently, you know?
Yeah, I see people doing it. God, there's a specific type of marketing that's called. I can't remember what it's called though. It'll come to me right after we finish the podcast. But where you do cause controversy to get clicks and everything. And I do think, like, I've even seen like Ramit Sethi lean into that sometimes, like where he, like, I think that happened during the pandemic. He started like really leaning into the political side of things, and obviously like Dave Ramsey and all that. Like, do you think not doing that has hurt your career? Because I feel that way for me. I feel like I don't want to lean into that stuff because like I'm a nice person. I like being nice to people, and it's hard for me to like just be a jerk just to get clicks. Not that everybody's a jerk, but you know what I'm saying. Like have a strong
Right.
stance to get clicks. Like, do you think it's hurt you that you haven't done that?
I would say that it's held me back for sure. I don't know if I'd say it hurt me. I would say that it's held me back. And I think I had a buddy, he had this quote. He's like, stand for something or you'll fall for anything. Right. And
Mm,
so I think there's this idea of like, at some level, we got to stand for something. And
yeah.
so for me, I think I do get a little bit of flack from the debt side of things, right? Because a lot of people think that, debt makes the world go round. And so they're like, I've got a loan on my car and I've got student loans and I'll pay them off 30 years from now. I'm not worried about it because I can get 10% in the market. And, so it's like, I definitely get a little bit of that because I've taken a stand on like, hey, I'm debt free and I prefer to be that way. And if
Yeah.
you want to get out of debt, come to me. I'll help you get there, Um, but yeah, I think not being hard on certain things, I think, yeah, it people gravitate towards people that are like, dude, that guy said what I wanted to say, but I've never had the balls to do it.
Right.
And so I want to follow him because I like, how he does things. And so I think I'm going to do a little bit more of that, like, or
Okay.
at least a little bit more pushing back, especially because I interview people on my podcast. And some people, like this guy was talking about kind of timing the stock market, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that can be risky, like maybe that worked out for you, but if someone's listening to this, that could be detrimental if they pull out all their money because they think the stock market's going to go down. And then the
Yeah.
Fed just said they're going to lower interest rates 3 times next year. And now the stock market's going to go up and they're going to miss out on that gain. Like I
Yeah.
don't mess with that stuff. So
Yeah. I feel like I need to find something to have a really strong opinion about. it's like I feel like if I leaned into that stuff that I'd probably do pretty well with it, but I don't really have anything. Like usually when my brain goes is like I just see both sides of it. Like, yeah, okay, I can see why you think that. Like I think this. But yeah, maybe I need to like manufacture some kind of thing to be pissed off about. Speaking of the Fed, I was going to ask you about that. What do you think? Are we hitting this soft landing? How do you feel about this whole
well,
situation?
dude, I just heard about that. I don't even know if it was an email or a podcast or what, but if they really do that, it makes total sense. Like the fact that they kept pushing rates up I'm like, okay, wages have not kept up with inflation.
Yeah.
Now you've got houses that are totally unaffordable. I look all over like on Zillow and stuff just to see what's going on, like price cut, price cut, price cut. Like, okay, well, obviously people aren't buying homes, right? So your
Yeah.
best bet is, hey, if you want to be able to, kind of recover the economy and keep it going and not just be stagnant, you got to lower rates. And so I had a buddy who's a mortgage broker here, and he said he was quoting rates in the sixes again, which
Yeah.
they were an 8 just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So I think if they do that, then obviously that gives people more confidence, which means the stock market will rally, and so it does appear that way. But I still feel like when my sentiment from people that email and the people I talk to is they're still scraping by, living paycheck to paycheck, not being able to afford things.
I think that, dude, I think so too. Like, it's funny because I read I read the headlines about stuff and it's like, you know, and not, to go into the politics things like Bidenomics is working and all this stuff. And when I talk to people, I'm like, dude, people are struggling right now, like really struggling. And I think I told one of our other guests, a while back, like we've had more requests for payment plans on our info products, our courses than I've ever seen before. And
Mm.
like, even like, and we've done some of that to see like, okay, do we need to do that? Like, is that, we've tested it out because the
Right.
risk always is like, if you do payment plans, like some people will buy a course and then just like cancel their credit card, which sucks. But like we even put out some, like we tested a really low payment plan for like 12 months and they don't have interest on them or anything. But like that still wasn't enough for a lot of people. I think some of that is like the audience that you bring in, but I think that people really are struggling a lot more than it seems like right now. And you said you're feeling the same thing.
Yeah, I feel the same thing. And I mean, the pinch is just like inflation. So prices, now I will say like gas has come down.
Yeah.
It used to be people would just gripe about gas and you're like, dude, I think I paid like close to $3 the other day or 3.40 or something. It was like, where it was like almost $6 before. So it's like, I think there was all this inflation, grocery store, gas, housing, all this stuff. It is starting to swing back, but not enough to where people feel like they have breathing room yet.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. The thing that I worry about the most, I had Marco from Whiteboard Finance on, and he was talking about the commercial real estate sector and
Hmm.
how like there is a there there are really bad things on the horizon because of the lack of space that's actually being rented out, and all these people are sitting on these kind of bad loans, and there's no tenants. And so like I went to downtown Houston actually just last weekend, and we did this like it was like a tour of all the kind of some of the biggest skyscrapers and stuff in the Houston area. And there is so much empty space. Like it was wild how many empty floors there were in these
Wow.
buildings. And like they're having trouble getting people to come back to work. And you think about that, it's like, I wonder if that's going to be the next big thing. I feel like it's either that, or if I had a crystal ball, the car loan stuff. Cause have you seen car loans? Like how long they're getting stretched out for these
Yep.
crazy vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, and the average car loan was like over $700 a month or something ridiculous, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's so. Yeah, so there's an example from, and I don't know if you consider this commercial, but it's like large residential, like big apartment complex in San Francisco. They had like a floating note. It was worth 500 million. They owe 389 million. They went to go get it appraised, and it appraised at like 269 million. So they can't get financing because they owe 389. It's only worth 260, and they probably had 3% on it. Now they got to get it at 8. And you're like, dude, there's so much of that type of stuff out there that is real
Hmm.
that we just don't know what kind of effect that could have on the rest, like a
Yeah,
ripple
it scares
effect.
me a little bit. It
Yeah.
scares me a little bit. I'm like, oh man, because I feel like especially just being a business owner, like I feel fortunate that like my businesses have survived over the last 5 years, just because like, dude, like the pandemic, like I had no idea. Like I was trying to like close. There was like this big sponsor deal that I was trying to close, like literally as the shutdowns were happening. And there were just so many examples of that, of like I felt like I was just grinding to make sure that everything like survived through all that time. And it's like I feel like we're kind of on the other side of that now. And then it's
Yeah.
like now it feels like there's about to be another shoe to drop. But I feel like through your time being an entrepreneur, has it always felt that way, where it's like you're always having to do the next thing to make sure the business grows or whatever?
Yeah, so I think I mean, over the years, it was like the first thing I think I got the most money from was AdSense, and then it was like, well, that wasn't a lot of money, and then Facebook, Facebook sending traffic, and then it was Pinterest, and then it was Google for a long time. It's kind of like this constant adapting to like what's the best way to get in front of people, what's the best way to get traffic for less, how to make things efficient. Um, Now with AI, you're like, should I have AI content? Should I have writers? Like it's like there's so many things to constantly adapt, right? Like, and I'm a guy that I really like consistency, and so
Yeah.
it really kind of like makes me uncomfortable when I'm like, okay, now I have to figure out how do I integrate AI into my business because it's not going away, and is there a way to do it in a way that still has my personality and still helps people and is accurate and all that kind of stuff. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a constant struggle.
Have you ever thought about just going back and getting like a regular job? Because I think about this all the time.
Dude, so kind of funny story. I applied for a position with Dave Ramsey, and I
What?
and
Is
I
this
did
breaking
not
news?
I did not get it. Yeah, so this is personal finance gossip here. No, but this is actually right before he had the rants on the 8% withdrawal rate. Did you hear
Oh
about
yeah.
that?
Yeah, Marco and I talked about that when he came on the podcast.
Yeah, but it's so funny because I was like, dude, I don't think I could ever work for him. I would say I align with him on like 80% of the stuff, right? Well, I shouldn't even say that, maybe 70, right? Like I still use credit cards. I don't think, mutual funds are a good idea for the most part. I think most people could just buy index funds, set it and forget it. Like, so I think there are things where there'd be enough of like butting of heads that like he wants people that drink his Kool-Aid, right? And if you don't drink
Right.
his Kool-Aid, you're probably not going to be a good fit for his organization. So, but I was just thinking like, hey, if I was to work for somebody that's making a large impact in the personal finance world, who would it be? I mean, he's the guy that comes to mind, right? Like, at least for me.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like maybe Marco, but no.
Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of gig did you apply for? Like a
Personality job. So
really?
basically, yeah, I'd be his investing personality.
Whoa. What's the process like of trying to get that job?
So this is the second time that I've done it. So the first time I did it, I was a nobody. I was just getting started. They flew out a recruiter to meet with me. He took me to some fancy restaurant.
Mm,
Talked about all the details. He told me about like Dave Ramsey's plan to transition from being a personality to having
yeah.
more of a group of personalities. And so kind of what your point was, where he diversified his revenue over all these other people. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'd love to be a part of something like that. And obviously he's built like an amazing business and he helps millions of people. I mean, I've gone to his conferences. I mean, dude, he fills stadiums. Like he gets energized. Like
Yeah.
I feel good when I come out of it. Right. Like I'm like, the guy's doing some magic, And but I would just say they are like strongly vetting. I mean, they've had some bad things with like Chris Hogan. They
Yeah.
had that other guy, that John. It's like
What's
he
his
wrote a
name?
book that like he's like a comedian kind of guy
Yeah.
that worked for him for a while. I forget his last name. But anyways, but he's had some personalities, and you got to imagine like they have to fly out there, they move their families there, they sell their houses in their old place. Like it's a complete like they got to make sure that everybody is like you're going to be on the team for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
Um, I'm definitely not that guy.
So how far was it just on the second time you just like got to the application process, like, or did you talk
Yeah.
to a
So
recruiter again, or
yeah. So I mean, the first time around, I think it was like you send a video interview and they
yeah.
ask you a bunch of questions, and then you have a recruiter, and then you just kind of keep going down that line. And then at some point, they're like, okay, not the last part. One of the last parts is you fly out to Nashville and you have to give us talk to the entire Ramsey Solutions team. And that's
Whoa.
kind of like, okay, so you want to be a personality, like your goal, you're going to be speaking on these different things. Now come speak to our organization about it. So I didn't
Dang.
get to that level. I got
Dang,
cut before
that's a lot of pressure. Yeah.
that. Right.
So I mean, was that you were just I mean, are you interested in any other kind of gig like that? Does like Ramit Sethi have anything like that? Like are there more jobs like that out there that sound cool?
I mean, I don't even know if that sounded cool. I mean, it sounded cool in the sense of like, I don't know, when my business is tied to Google,
Yeah.
and when Google's not doing well, you're kind of like, well, snap, like, unless I have another way to get in front of people that's going to drive traffic and revenue, like, I need to
Yeah.
figure something out in my space. But what I've found is I'm the king of Bing. So, if Bing ever takes over and wins their lawsuit, I'm gonna crush it. But we still get traffic from Pinterest and other sources, and so we're doing okay. It's just one of those things where I gotta, that whole book, Good to Great, where it was talking about
Yeah.
businesses went from good to great. Well, there's businesses that failed, right?
Hmm.
Circuit City was one of them. I forget what the other one was. So he wrote this other book called Built to Last, and it's all about being able to adapt in
Yeah.
these times, right? That's where companies either fail or thrive. And I really do think like adapting to podcast, video is where it's at. And I think if we can do that, there's no reason to go, look for another job or try to get something in the industry. So
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, that's why I've put out as many courses as I've put out over the last, I don't know, 2 years. Just because of that, dude. It's like, man, things are going well right now, but like I feel like the more that we can have our revenue not tied to affiliate marketing and Google and just, anything that we can control more is the way to go. And so we've just been putting out a lot of courses, but yeah, man, I feel you on the wanting to diversify away from Google. I hate Google so much, but I'm not, well, knock on wood, because I like Google too. But yeah, man, I don't have any other questions for you. I didn't actually have prepared questions. We're hitting about an hour. My kid's going to wake up soon. So, can you, tell everybody where to find you? Where do they subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff?
yeah, best place, wellkeptwallet.com. And then YouTube is Wellkept Wallet is our handle, and love to connect with anybody and help you any way I can.
I saw. Do you also have like a personal account too?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Do they subscribe there or no?
Uh, no, I
No.
would just say because it's more of like a test account. It's something I've had for a long time. There's a lot of stuff on there. I think I have my cousin jumping on a Tempur-Pedic bed with like a glass of wine to see if it's going to spill. You know, like there's not much that they're going to get
Okay.
on there.
So don't go there. Go to Well Kept Wallet.
I mean, if you want to laugh, you go there. But I would say Well Kept Wallet if you want to learn something or
Awesome,
yeah.
man. Cool. Well, thanks, bro. I appreciate it.